Tonight's debate is being sponsored by the Shakopee Chamber and Visitors Bureau and hosted by Shakopee Public Schools in the auditorium of Shakopee High School. My name is Rob O'Neill. I'm the pastor of Brookwood Community Church, a member of the Public Policy Committee of the Shakopee Chamber, and I'll be serving as tonight's moderator. Our candidates tonight for City Council are Mike Luce, Kathy Mokel, Jordan Olson, Mark Reimler, and Aaron Wire. Would you welcome our candidates this evening, please? Our candidates are arranged tonight in alphabetical order. They'll be asked questions to which they'll have an opportunity to respond with a 1-minute answer. If a follow-up is asked, they'll have 30 seconds to respond to the follow-up, and they'll be given opportunities to make rebuttal marks occasionally, and when given that opportunity, they'll have 30 seconds to do so. Each of the candidates will have an opportunity now to make a 1-minute opening statement, and we'll begin with Mr. Luce.
Hi, my name is Mike Luce. I'm a lifelong resident of Shakopee. I've been here 50 plus years, which makes me one of the senior people here. I've seen a lot of changes in town. I've raised my family. I've got 2 children, 6 grandchildren. They all live in town. I want to leave the town better than what it is today, just for the fact of my family being here. So that's part of the reason I'm running, and part of who I am is the family I leave. So that's why I'm here.
Ms. Mokel?
Hi, I'm Kathy Mokel, and I'm a successful small business owner here in Shakopee. I have lived in Shakopee for 14 years. I could have opened my business anywhere, but Shakopee and this community are my home. As a successful businesswoman, I have seen how taking an active role in the community helps create positive change for my business and other local businesses. I would like to extend that role into the City Council and provide my leadership to help Shakopee move forward.
Mr. Olson.
Hi, my name is Jordan Olson. I've lived in this town most of my life. I graduated here. I decided to get involved with city politics because I don't know what the words "of the people, by the people, and for the people" mean if you aren't informed and involved with what's going on. I make it my prerogative to know all of my representatives and who they are, and I want to be on city council because I believe in keeping a balanced and even spending, and I don't want to see any ups or downs, too high, too low. I think that we are on a really good growth spurt right now, but that's not going to last forever. So what we need to do is carefully manage our city's coffers.
Mr. Reimler.
Greetings, my name is Mark Reimler. I'm running for Shakopee City Council. I want to also thank the Chamber and Visitors Bureau for allowing us the forum. Thank you, Rob, for doing a great job. My wife Lori and I moved here in 2002. We built a home and we put down roots. I've been active in the community as a member of a couple of different committees, the Environmental Committee, on Transit Committee. I've worked as an election judge for the past 8 years. And I'm going to publicly make 3 promises to the people of Shakopee. If I'm elected, I will make time to listen to anybody that wants to talk to me. I will always work in the best interest of Shakopee, and I will never forget that I am spending your money.
Mr. Wire.
Thank you, Rob. Thank you, Chamber, for putting on the event. Thank you, the school district, for offering the auditorium so not everybody's crammed into the city council chambers. But mainly thank everybody for coming out tonight. I view community involvement in the political process as a huge thing. One of the things I'm running on is that only 23% of voters actually elected the 2011 council and mayor. And so I'm trying to get that out to people that it's very important at your local level to get out and vote. Background for me, my wife Sarah and I moved here in 2004, built a house similar to Mark. Right away we started getting involved in the community. We hosted a national night out in our neighborhood in 2004 and also in 2005. Then I started doing other things like we joined the Shakopee CERT team, as well as sorry, I got the yellow card. Pushed through the Shakopee Citizens Police Academy, and most recently I was on the Environmental Advisory Committee. And one of the big reasons I'm running is that I want to continue my community involvement, and my next logical step would be on the City Council.
Candidates, our first round of questions, I'll ask a question and it'll go first of all to two of you. If you'd like to respond and are not one of the two that we asked that question to, you can use one of your rebuttals to respond as well. But the first question is going to be, what is the role of a city council member? And that question will begin with Mr. Reimler.
Well, I've always thought of the elected government and the council as the five, as a team that works together. I would certainly like to see a little more collaboration, a little more discussion at the city council meetings. I'd also like to see a lot more people from Shakopee showing up into those meetings and getting involved in the process.
Ms. Mokel, what is the role of a city council member?
Our role as a city council member is to adopt and establish ordinance for the city. It is also to establish public policy, and I believe it's also to manage the finances of the city and of all of the residents.
All right, moving on to the topic of livability. We recently visited with ninth graders in Shakopee East and West Junior High Schools, and one of the #1 topics surrounding livability for the ninth graders had to do with hockey and ice rinks. So do you see the need for additional recreational ice rinks and hockey facilities for the city? And if so, how would you pursue it? Mr. Wire, will begin with you.
So I do actually see a need, especially if the second high school referendum is passed. I can see right away that there's going to be a request for a second ice sheet. How we get there is going to be the challenge. We've had at least 2 referendums now where the voters decided that they weren't supportive of that. What I would like to see, similar to the Tennis Association, where they are developing or working on a plan to create a tennis center, working with the private-public partnership there. So if the Hockey Association proposed something like that, I would definitely consider that. But right now, there's not an appetite from the majority of the city to spend more money on a second inside ice sheet. Beyond that, there are a lot of external ice rinks that are available, but I can see the need for an internal ice sheet, and I think we got to try to figure out how we can do it without having to spend a lot of public money to do it.
Mr. Olson.
I would like to probably get the private sector involved in building a second ice sheet if that's what the city wants. I think the more competition you have, the farther the price is going to go down. I don't know whether I'm not running for school board. I don't know what the school board, if they're actually going to ask for this referendum or not. But if I'm elected councilor, I will have to consider what the school board wants. $89 million from the people themselves is a lot of money. So I will have to weigh my decision making very carefully in order to actually watch the individual taxpayer. As far as a sheet of ice goes, let's get the private sector on it.
Our next question covers the topic of cultural diversity. What challenges and opportunities come from the growing diversity in the population of Shakopee, and what would you do to address the possible challenges and to maximize the opportunities that diversity presents? Mr. Luce, we'll begin with you.
Well, I work part-time in retail, and the language barrier is very difficult with the different groups of people that have moved to town. Just some of their cultural differences also make it very difficult to work with them, to meet their expectations. I think something has to be done, and I do believe it doesn't fall on the city proper. It falls on the school districts. It's a language barrier. Once we can speak the same language and communicate, we can work anything out. So that's where it's got to be done first.
Mr. Reimler, what challenges and opportunities come from the growing diversity in Shakopee? How would you address the challenges and maximize the opportunities?
Well, I think there's definitely a language and a cultural barrier that all the cities need to work on doing a little better job. Now, that doesn't mean that the city has to get involved per se, but I think what we're doing currently with having a forum to bring in some of the different, a cultural forum to bring in a lot of different people to understand what they want, it's a good thing. It also gives them an opportunity to understand how the local government works, so we can get a little bit more buy-in from themselves as well.
We move now to the topic of economic development, and we may unleash quite a discussion here with the next topic. Recently, the City Council has used tax abatement tools to entice businesses to come to Shakopee. What are your opinions on the use of TIF or tax abatement to bring business development to Shakopee? Ms. Mokel, we'll begin with you.
I think when we use tax abatement and TIF, we need to use it correctly. I believe that it can have a positive impact on a city when it is implemented properly. In Shakopee, so far, we have only used tax abatement, and our contracts are written that the tax is still paid until they have met the criteria, and then that portion is abated back. They are still paying their taxes to the county. They are still paying their school taxes. They are still paying their taxes to the state. And in some instances of what I looked at, the amount abated is only about 10% of the total tax that that company is paying.
Mr. Wire, tax abatement and TIF, what are your opinions on their use to bring business development to Shakopee?
So my opinion on that is you really have to look at each one separately. I even use Data Card as an example. I think Data Card was a great use of tax abatement because it was taking an existing building that was already developed by ADC, now Tyco or TE Connectivity, and then Data Card wanted to come in, make improvements to it, and then the abatement is only on that improved value. So I think that's a great use. So I think we have to consider each one carefully. The other thing what I'd like to see going forward, it's been already discussed tonight though, is the criteria that's used for the tax abatement. I think that's an important aspect to understand and communicate to the citizens to understand the criteria we're using. And I know it's in development, but we as a city and as a council need to get it out so that people understand the criteria we're using to make sure that we're making the best decisions.
Well, as a follow-up to the two of you, and some of the rest of you may want to jump in on this as well, what type of objective criteria would you establish for offering tax abatement to businesses? Ms. Mokel, do you have thoughts on criteria?
I believe that some of the criteria that I would look for is what types of jobs are being brought to the city, whether it's high-paying or low-paying. And then I think it would also depend on the type of business that is being brought to Shakopee and whether they have longevity and if they can support themselves through those 9-year contracts.
Mr. Wire, 30-second follow-up.
So part of the criteria is I look at it, right now we have a base wage threshold that the city considers, or you need to meet in order for the city to consider tax abatement. Kathy brought up a good point I would add on to a little bit with, we'd also have to consider what types of jobs. What I mean by that is the specific skill set, whether it's engineers or other professions like that, to try to get a balance if that's what we want to do. Somebody mentioned at the August 7th meeting, actually, yeah, well, I don't know if it's August 7th, but mentioned at a meeting, are we trying to be a Silicon Valley, or exactly what are we trying to do?
May I have 30 seconds on that?
Yes, Mr. Olson, 30-second rebuttal.
I think the issue of tax abatement is probably the number one thing that our city is going through right now. If I'm elected councilor, I will have to look at each and every individual company, and I want to know where they're coming from. Why are they asking for this? How much money they have, and what do they wish to spend in our community? Also, how many of those jobs are actually going to be located here? How many Shakopee citizens are actually going to get a job out of this? To establish a criteria that governs our actual council from doing these things rather than just doing basically whatever we feel like, I think is necessary.
Very good. Continuing on the topic of economic development then, do you think there's too much focus on developing downtown or not enough focus? And we'll begin with Mr. Luce.
Being a lifelong resident of Shakopee, I've seen the downtown grow and subside and grow again. It's in need of help, but it's a real tough draw to say that we help one area of town and not another. You can't take the taxes from one part of town and just hand it over to help another one out. Council, like Mr. Lehman said before, we need to sit down with all the property owners. I just was speaking with one of the property owners before this. We need to go the whole length of the corridor, get everybody together that wants to come together and get their viewpoints, put them together, and see what we can come up with. Because as I've seen it before, they want everybody on the corridor to pay. but the corridor stops at Atwood or Apgar. The people on the west end don't get any benefit, but they're forced to fill in. Same with the east end. Stops at Minnesota Street. Anybody what are east of that, you're too bad, you're outside our area. So we need to include everybody. We need to get everybody's input and figure something out because it does need improvement and it would help the city.
Mr. Olson, do you think there's too much focus on developing downtown or not enough?
Well, that's kind of a good question. Downtown has been kind of a concern of mine. I think Mr. Luce is pretty right on in his statement. We don't really have a defined downtown area, or if we do, it stops here, it goes there. I think that it's not necessarily government's role to get too involved with business. I think in order to help our downtown area, I'd like to see the Taste of Shakopee, and I know the J.C.'s put this on, I'd like to see it put back up on First Avenue to get more involvement from the people. There used to be so many people that come down for Derby Days. It was awesome. It was a great time, and I've worked every year at Derby Days, and I've seen the Taste just have a drop-off. I think if we can attract people to downtown, that's going to help every single business down there.
Mr. Reimler.
I'm not sure if that's the right question. We've got the downtown area, which is a business climate on its own. It's more quaint. It's almost Stillwater-y. That's how I would like to envision that. Then we've got another area. We've got the 169 in Marshall, which is big box. We've got Dean Lakes, which is a mix of big box and commercial. We've got Southbridge, which is all big box. We need to figure out a plan to be able to draw people into each of the areas and let people, if they want to come in and do some quaint shopping, they can do that downtown. If they need to do big box shopping, they can go over to another area.
Very good. On the topic of economic development still, and actually moving more to the topic of current businesses, what needs to be done to support and grow our current businesses? Mr. Wire, we'll begin with you.
So I think one of the crucial things to support the current businesses, frankly, is to keep taxes low. There's been a lot of discussion today about taxes, and there's been a lot of discussion about, property taxes for residential areas. But as was mentioned earlier, the commercial industrial areas are where the taxes were going up, and that affects the businesses. So as we're adding to the levy, that has a negative impact on those businesses, and it has a negative impact on whether people want to bring business here. So that's a key thing. The other thing I would like to see is more promotion. I think with the new website for the city that's under development, I'd like to see more promotion of the businesses. And then finally, I guess, would be just continuing our working relationship with the Chamber of Commerce to understand whether there's any city policies or ordinances or procedures that are hindering or either hindering new growth or being a burden on existing businesses.
Mr. Reimler, what needs to be done to support and grow current businesses?
Shakopee is unique in a lot of different communities. We've got an educated, motivated workforce. We've got easy access to the freeway. We've got land for development. I think the city government has to use all the tools in the toolbox. We've got to use abatement. We've got to use TIF. We've got to use the scale, working in conjunction with the county. I think right now Shakopee is going through an unprecedented growth, and we've moved very fast, very quickly, and I think part of it has been very good. Part of it has been potentially hazardous for the future, but I think we really need to not take a step back, but we really, as we're going forward, we really need to make sure we know exactly what we're doing and put a plan together that we can follow in the future.
This may seem like a factual question, but it also has to do with perspective, and that is, are city taxes going up or down, and what do you base your response on? Mr. Olson, we'll begin with you.
The national economy has a lot to do with property values, and as property values fluctuate, that's going to determine people's taxes. So basically, I think that if we just keep things stable and not too up or down, I think that's really going to be beneficial. I also think that people need to have confidence in us and our decision-making process. Yeah, that's basically what I have, sir.
Ms. Mokel, are city taxes going up or down, and what do you base your response on?
Well, I know my property taxes have gone down, but as far as the city taxes, I know there was an article in the paper that there was increase based on, I believe it's the levy. And so I think it's just a twofold in which piece of it that you're looking at, whether it's our residential or it's our business tax.
For our next question, we'll turn to the topic of transportation. Citizens have raised concerns about the volume of the train whistles in town. What can and should be done about this? Mr. Luce, we'll begin with you.
I've heard so much about this, it's unbelievable. I grew up half a block from one lane from the tracks. The train literally shook our house when it went by. As I've found out, talking to a number of people, this is a federal issue. The train has to signal every non-cross-armed crossing. They have a directed number of blasts they have to give for a certain duration. Now, talking to other people, this duration is being abused somewhat because I was told that when an engineer actually has an accident, they tend to lay on the whistle more because they can wake you up if you're sleeping on the tracks with that horn. So they just figure they're never going to have to deal with another fatal accident. They're going to lay on that horn all they can. I think we need to do some talking with the federal government, whoever is overseeing this part of the railroad, and it should be able to be toned down some, but it's going to be a very difficult problem because it does involve the federal government.
Mr. Wire, what can and should be done about citizens' concern about train whistle volume?
Well, what can be done, and probably what should be done, is we need to investigate further what can be done. I know there was some discussion about being a whistle-free town, and my understanding is that it's a good chunk of money to convert the non-cross-arm crossing to have cross-arms. The other concern, as I understand, again, I haven't fully researched it, but the other concern with that is, as I understand, is it's going to be, they can go faster than once they have that whistle-free option, and that can cause other issues, as Mike mentioned. You know, if you're rattling the house now at the speed it's at, if you go faster, it could be that much worse. So we need to do some more digging into it. I believe the legislature is even looking at it, so we'd be working with them to understand what we could do as far as a city.
Mr. Luce.
I'd like to add to that. The information that I've gotten, it would cost millions of dollars to put cross arms at every intersection for the railroad to be happy with them. The other deal is the roadbed that the train tracks sit on could not take the higher speed. If you watch the train from above as it goes through town, it rocks back and forth. At a higher speed, that's only going to be increased.
All right, moving to the topic of zoning now. Do you see any challenges with our current zoning laws? Mr. Reimler, we'll begin with you.
That's a pretty broad question. Do you want to narrow that?
It's as broad as you want to make it.
Wow, okay. It's so broad. I'm not sure where to go with that.
Okay, fair enough. Mr. Olson, do you see any challenges with our current zoning laws?
Currently, I've seen a few things come up at council meetings that I go to. I don't see, currently, you can kind of come to the city and ask them to rezone your property, but I don't see, I guess, a whole lot of issues. I've seen one, I think it was RAR, they wanted to rezone a parcel of land down by them, but then they changed their mind, and they talked to all their neighbors, and they're going to put their new addition in like the CH Lumber place or abouts there. So right now you can come to the city and ask, and we can approve or disapprove, but the council, that is.
Moving then to intergovernmental relations. What are the challenges and opportunities in the relationship between the city and Scott County? Ms. Mokel, we'll begin with you.
Repeat that.
What are the challenges and opportunities in the relationship between the city and Scott County?
The opportunities are when partner with them with the when we're doing our road projects and things like that. Where our opportunity is, it was brought up, is our one-stop shop. It is there's 7 cities, I believe, involved and the county, and what they want to create is a place where businesses can go and they can get all their answers in one place. I know when we started our business, we had gone to the city, and then, something was wrong, and so then you had to go to this entity, and where this one-stop shop would create a place for those businesses coming here to go to and get all of their answers and a checklist of where to go.
Mr. Luce, what are the challenges and opportunities in the relationship between the city and the county?
I think the relationships are great. I know a couple of the county board members personally, and they work very well with anyone. The one challenge is that we don't use it. They just hired a staff member for City Hall that was going to be a shared deal with the county, and for some reason they decided at the last minute not to make use of it. I just don't understand that. I think we need to do more of that. You got to use staff to their fullest, and why hire more people than you need and not utilize them properly?
Mr. Reimler.
I think Shakopee and Scott County do a pretty good job with working together. We're part of the scale, and as Kathy said, the one-stop shop I think was a great idea. And now Shakopee is the engine that is truly driving Scott County. Business development is the fuel that's driving the engine, or is the fuel that's driving that engine. So we really need to, I think, flex our muscles a little more. Shakopee does, working with the county.
Very good. For this next round of questions, candidates, we're going to ask them to 3 of you this time. You continue to have the same number of rebuttal remarks if you'd like to choose to jump in on a question, but we'll begin to ask 3 candidates now. And first, we're going to begin with energy. And we'd like to ask about the Shakopee Public Utility Commission. Is Shakopee Public Utility Commission, or SPUC, the most efficient way to provide utilities to our residents? And we'll begin with Ms. Mokel on this question.
Well, I guess as a resident, I sometimes struggle with SPU as an entity. I think sometimes that comes across to others. It's understanding your bill sometimes, understanding the rates, and when you call, you don't exactly get the best answer. I'm not sure that entity should still be housed under the city. I'm not sure if that's something that we should look at, whether that's sold off and or not.
Mr. Reimler, Shakopee Public Utilities and the Commission. Is that the most effective way to provide utilities to Shakopee residents?
Is it the most effective? I'm not sure. I think they're doing a very good job in providing electrical and utilities for us. I can, in speaking with my own personal experiences, I've always had good customer service with them. They've been very good about getting out to do any type of work that needs to be done, turn off water, turn on water. So I've had very good experience, and I see from living in different areas, I think our electricity is probably the same or maybe a little cheaper than other places I've lived.
Mr. Wire, is Shakopee Public Utility Commission the most efficient way to provide utilities to residents?
That's a good question. Typically in other cities, you would have a private sector. Well, it's private, but it's somewhat regulated by the state, right? They got to get approvals. But, right now, I think it probably is. What I've heard, I haven't talked to a lot of people from other cities. I know people from other cities. We don't typically talk about our utility bills, but I've heard that Shakopee does have lower utility rates compared to some place like Prior Lake. So I would say right now it probably is.
We'd like to ask a couple questions about city staff at this point. How would you describe a successful relationship between the mayor, the city council, and the city staff? Is it functioning successfully now? And if not, what would you do differently? Mr. Olson, will begin with you.
The relationship between the mayor, the council, and the city staff seems to kind of go back and forth sometimes. I think that sometimes questions are asked in a certain way in order to get a certain answer. I think if I'm elected councilor, it would be my job to ask questions and demand answers from those whom we are paying. I'd like to see a little bit more in the openness, if you will. I think that what we do with the people's money needs to be accounted for, and it needs to be explained clearly to all the people on camera for the entire world to see.
Mr. Wire, how would you describe a successful relationship between the mayor, the city council, and the city staff? And is it functioning that way now? And if not, how would you do it differently?
So I think a successful relationship between staff and the council would be where the council has set a vision, and staff understands that vision, and the issues that they bring before the council are true to that vision. One thing that I've been talking to people about, though, is that we are, in my opinion, trying to keep a lean staff. And so one thing I want to do as a counselor, if I'm elected, is to research the topics that are brought before the council so that we can make sure that we're getting all the information. Sometimes staff, like I said, they're shorthanded, so they won't necessarily have the time to get that, and that's one thing that I would like to see and I would bring if elected. But otherwise, I think it's a pretty good working relationship right now. I haven't seen a lot of, I think honestly the difference between what's going on right now is that there isn't necessarily a clean vision with the council, and so anytime there's an issue with staff, it's because there's not an agreement on the council.
Mr. Luce, how would you describe a successful mayor-council-staff relationship? Is it functioning that way now? And if not, what would you do differently?
I would hold staff accountable. When I ask them for information, I want both sides of the issue. I don't want the side that they prefer. I think that's what they're getting now in most cases. From what I understand, there's a few department heads that will skew information so that they get what they want. There are other department heads that when you ask them, they give you both sides and they tell you which is pro, which is con. You make up your mind. That's the way it's supposed to be done. They're supposed to give you every bit of information you ask for, and if they don't, I do believe they need to be held accountable, and I do believe that is what is happening now at this point, because I think the council is leaning way too far one way, and I think part of that is coming from administration at City Hall, and they are directing staff to follow that line.
Staying on the topic, Mr. Reimler.
If I could?
You've actually used your 2 rebuttals. I'm sorry, we're going to have to move to other.
Did I use both mine?
No.
I'll give mine to him.
Okay.
Thank you very much, Mike.
You got a free rebuttal.
Anybody else? I think right now the city staff is doing a very admirable job. They're working hard as being pretty lean. I would like to see them bring in a little more information when they're asked it. The mayor and the council need to set a very clear direction. I think an opportunity for the mayor and council going forward is to be a little more clear with the direction they want to set. But right now, I think there's a good working relationship between the two. I don't see any animosity. I think it's working well.
Mr. Reimler, this question will be still on staff and go to you. What is your opinion on city staffing levels? If it's not enough, what are our areas of need in city staff? And if it is too much, what positions would you eliminate?
That's not a question I can answer right now without without being on the council and getting the information. But again, from what I've seen, I've talked to a number of the different heads of departments. I've talked to a number of the different inspectors. I've talked to some people just stopping on the street that are, cleaning the sidewalk in the wintertime. It seems to me that morale is pretty good. People are motivated. They like working for the city. Again, I would just like to see the council be able to set a little more clear direction and provide that to the staff.
Mr. Luce, what is your opinion of the city staffing levels? If it's not enough, where are the areas of need? And if it's too much, what positions would you eliminate?
I can't say specifically which ones that I'd eliminate, but I do question adding 8 staff members in 1 year. Was there really a need for it? And I would really like to dig into that. Another thing, like Mark was talking about with city street workers, Burnsville, I believe it was 2 years ago, they eliminated their snow plowing for sidewalks other than city property. They did it for a budget reason. I do believe we need to look at that also. The city is going out with their workers and plowing miles of sidewalks that the property owner should be taking care of. So there's an area where we could better use our staff.
Ms. Mokel, what is your opinion of city staffing levels? If it's not enough, where are the areas of need? And if it's too much, what positions would you eliminate?
I think our city staffing levels are pretty good right now. I think what is happening, unfortunately, is that when city staff is hired, we aren't always able to hire somebody that maybe has all the knowledge of the person who held the position before, and that's where you come up with more staff than there was before. I think that that's going to come up more and more as technology and as we spread out with different entities in the city.
Well, candidates, what is your understanding of the open meeting laws, and is this an area that you have concerns in? Mr. Wire, will begin with you. Open meeting laws.
So having served on the Environmental Advisory Committee, it is required for all boards and commission members to attend an orientation session where we get educated on open meeting laws, because even though we're not elected, when we're on a commission and a board, we still have to follow the open meeting law. And so my understanding of it is that if you have more than a quorum and are discussing city business, that's a violation of the open meeting law. The issue you run into is an issue of perception. If you have a quorum of, whether it's council members, even advisory committee members, there can be a perception that there's a violation, but you don't know what's being discussed. If I were elected councilor, I would try to avoid that perception, so I would, well, my wife will want me to come home right after a meeting anyway, so I don't have a problem there. But I would avoid those situations as much as possible.
Ms. Mokel, what's your understanding of the open meeting laws, and is this an area of concern?
I understand the open meeting laws, as Aaron stated, that as long as it's not a quorum and not discussing city business. I don't believe that it's a problem as that I've seen in the last few years. I think everybody does their best job to remove themselves from that situation when they see that is occurring.
Mr. Olson, what's your understanding of the open meeting laws, and is this an area of concern?
I'd say it is an area of concern. My understanding of the open meeting law is basically what Mr. Wire said, is that you can't have a majority of council meeting outside of the chambers to discuss what they are or are not going to do with our city. I don't think there's anything wrong with council members talking to each other, because we're going to have to talk and see where we're coming from, but I think that it's a concern. I think it's probably inappropriate to have a majority of council meeting outside of our council chambers. That's one of the reasons I suggested that I'd like to see us move to 7 councilmen instead of 5.
For our final question this evening, candidates, what are your weaknesses and how will you work to compensate those areas? Mr. Luce, will begin with you.
My weaknesses is I'm very demanding. When I ask you to do something, I want it done. I don't take excuses. Staff is going to be rode pretty hard. That's a big failing of mine, but I think in the long run it serves most people very well. I may ruffle some feathers, but in the long run I think we'll work everything out.
Mr. Olson, what are your weaknesses and how will you work to compensate for those areas?
I would say my weakness is my youth. I mean, people look at me and they see a kid. If I'm elected councilor, I'm going to give the next 4 years of my life to this city. So every day is going to be a learning experience for me. I don't have a wife like a lot of, or a husband, like pretty much everybody else up here does. But I'm going to just give the next 4 years of my life to this city. So that's what I have to say about that.
Mr. Reimler, what are your weaknesses and how will you work to compensate for those weaknesses?
I like to move fast. My wife will agree that I have not a lot of patience, so I'll have to make sure, and I know that government doesn't move fast. Government has a lot of patience. So I'll have to kind of cut back on my expectations of moving quickly. But like Mike was saying, when I ask a question, I want the real answer. I don't want it sugar-coated. Give me the facts and let's make a decision and let's move, set a clear direction and move on from there.
Well, candidates, that brings us to the end of our questions. If you are here this evening and you've not had your questions answered, after our forum tonight, take a moment and ask one of the candidates. If you're joining us by television or by video, feel free to make contact with the campaigns directly. Or for more information about our candidates, you can also visit the Chamber's website, shakopee.org, and get more information there. Each candidate is now going to have 1 minute for their closing statement, and we will begin with Mr. Luce.
If elected, like Jordan said, I will dedicate 4 years to the city of Shakopee, and I will do my best to do the best for you. I will watch the bottom line. There will be, I think what you were referring to on that one question on the open meeting law was the article in the Valley News about a couple of people meeting at Turtles. That can't be allowed. I mean, if you're in public, you have to stay above board and not leave any questions unanswered. 2 people, that's it for council members, whatever a quorum is for the other groups. If there's a 3rd person in the area, stay away. You don't do that. If you want to go talk to them later, one-on-one, that's another story. But I will give you honest service for what you elect me to do.
Ms. Mokel?
First of all, I'd like to thank the Chamber and for everyone for coming for tonight's forum. And I am a successful small business owner here in Shakopee, and I have seen how taking an active role in our community helps create positive change. And I want to take that leadership and expertise and bring it to you as the future City Council member.
Mr. Olson?
This has been kind of a long, strange road for me. I never expected to be going this far or doing this in my younger years. But if I'm elected councilor, like I said before, I'm going to have the next 4 years of my life to the city of Shakopee, which means it will be my job to look out for the individuals, the individual taxpayer, and the rights of the individuals. I'm going to work to find regular common sense problems or solutions to problems instead of just resorting to making some ordinance because there was one guy who had a nasty pet store. I'm going to do what I can for the people the best I can do it.
Mr. Reimler?
The future is coming hard and fast for the city of Shakopee, and we need leaders that can strategically plan for those changes. I know that I have the skills and I can help Shakopee achieve those goals. My name is Mark Reimler. I'm running for Shakopee City Council, and I'm asking for your vote on November 5th.
Mr. Wire?
First, I want to thank the Chamber again, thank the school district, thank you, Mr. O'Neill, for moderating. I want to talk a little bit about my skill set. Haven't really focused on that tonight. Being an engineer at Seagate over the last 14 years, I have had the opportunity to develop some significant problem-solving skills, as well as I've had the opportunity to work with a diverse set of people and personalities. And I feel like I feel I can bring those skills to the council. It's a unique set of skills that I don't feel are necessarily represented on the council right now. And I believe that perspective will help me come in and work with the citizens of Shakopee and make Shakopee the best it can be.
Well, as we bring this forum to a close this evening, we need to remind you that the views expressed in tonight's debates are those of the candidates, not those of the Chamber and Visitors Bureau. The Chamber is sponsoring this event as a service to our community and has gone to great lengths to ensure the objectivity of this forum. The Chamber does not endorse any candidate but seeks to provide you, the citizens and voters of Shakopee, with the information you need to make an informed choice. We thank our audience for being here this evening. We express our gratitude as well to our hosts, the Shakopee Public Schools, to Shakopee Kids Voting as well. And on behalf of the Shakopee Chamber and Visitors Bureau, we thank you as well, all of our candidates. We appreciate your time, your candor, and the way that you're serving our community by running for office. You're performing an important service to us all. Election Day, I would remind you, is Tuesday, November 5th. Please remember to vote. Thank you, and good night.